uh, constraints to transforming the Philippine economy. Um, this agenda provides a framework for development for the upcoming Philippine Development Plan. It is the country's blueprint for development for the 2023 to 2020. Now, for the short-term issues, we focused on addressing the elevated prices in necessities, particularly food and transportation. We focus on addressing the economic scarring, socioeconomic scarring that are inflicted by the COVID-19. And finally, the addressing the vulnerabilities of certain population segments and certain shocks, including calamities. Now, for the medium term, the focus is, as shown by the slide and the presentation of Secretary Jokno, generating jobs and reducing poverty rapidly. Now, for that to happen, we need to address constraints to economic development, and these constraints include addressing the deficits in our infrastructure, infrastructure backlogs, addressing the issues concerning ease of doing business, and also leveling the playing field. Okay, so again, the intention there is to create more jobs, reduce poverty, and achieve economic prosperity toward leading us toward attaining development static, a high income economy by 2040. And this first 6 years or the next 6 years is an important step toward that direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. And so aside from this 8-point socioeconomic agenda, I understand, also coming from the Department of Budget and Management myself, that the National Expenditure Program has been turned over to the House of Representatives, and that the President has an agenda for prosperity, economic transformation towards inclusivity and sustainability. Ma'am, on this note, may we ask our Budget Secretary, what are the priority sectors of the Marcos administration?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. As we try to consolidate our fiscal position as presented with our medium-term fiscal framework, the disbursement of the national government will continue to be above 20%. So with this, the proposed budget for 2023 next year will roughly be about $92 billion US. And this is a quite increase of 4.9% from this year's budget. Among the sectors that we want to fund, and is in response also to our medium-term socio-economic agenda, the 5 sectors that we're focusing will be on education, agriculture sector, of course, infrastructure, and with the help of our private sector, health, and our social services. This is comprised of about 43% of our proposed budget for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You had mentioned the medium-term fiscal framework. On that note, may we ask our finance secretary on this medium-term fiscal framework, could you share with us your views on the government's medium-term infrastructure development goals?
Most people don't realize that what we want to do cannot be done within 1 year. So you really have to have a plan. And for the first time, we have adopted what is called a medium-term fiscal framework. So for the next 6 years, we told Congress essentially where we want to go, what's our current position, and where we want to be 6 years from now. So we told them our revenue forecast, our expenditure plan, and our deficit. What will be our deficit? How are we going to finance it? And actually on the financing, it's 75-25, 75 domestic, 25 foreign. This is so that we won't have a lot of foreign exchange risk. And luckily, they adopted our 6-year medium-term plan. So that's basically it, right? But really, it requires a lot of discipline to achieve that plan. And within that plan is also our commitment to spend 5 to 6% of our gross domestic product for infrastructure. You might not know this, but for the last 50 years, prior to the previous administration we took over from, the Philippine government spent only 2% for GDP, for infrastructure. And that's why we are one of the laggards in this part of the world. So we want to make up for that. And so we are going to spend 5 to 6% of our GDP for infrastructure. And by the way, when we talk of infrastructure, in many governments, telco, water, and power are within the public domain. That is not the case in the Philippines. So our 5 to 6% exclude any investment in those areas. Okay, so it could easily be around 10%. So that's basically our medium-term fiscal plan.
Thank you, sir. But since you had mentioned spending, if I may question again our budget secretary, because he had mentioned spending, and on the note of infrastructure, the president in his State of the Nation address has said that he will continue the build program, and it will now even be build better more. So on that note, ma'am, may I ask, what is the agenda for infrastructure spending?
As presented by the governor, and again consistent with the medium-term fiscal framework, we will slowly increase our spending for infrastructure from 5% this year, slowly increase up to 6% by 2028. When we talk about infrastructure, of course, we have here our Secretary of Transportation and Roads. They will be prioritizing road projects, busways and railways. But of course, we should also include social infrastructure. In the total pie, we'll have the social infrastructure as well. These are the basic education facilities like the school buildings, our health clinics and facilities. And one of the major component, of course, is digitalization. Sec Ivan later will inform us on the digitalization plan of the government. So we will put enough funding on digitalization as well to have an transparent, reduced cost of doing business. Will make our processes more efficient and effective. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So it's very clear that inclusivity and sustainability are part of the agenda. Now, when we talk about spending, we also have to factor in inflation. So if we may ask our central bank governor, how will the current inflation and policy rate affect the outlook on monetary and financial stability vis-a-vis economic growth?
First thing to say is the central bank objectives are constant. It's the environment that changes. And we just have price stability, predictable inflation, financial stability, since the Philippines is very bank-centric, well-capitalized banks, well-run banks. And then thirdly, of course, the payment system. So the key then is to achieve predictable inflation without necessarily bringing down growth too much. And to say the least, these are challenging times because U.S. interest rates are not just high, but sure to get higher. And then third, that means possibly a weaker peso, as shown in the case of weaker yen, weaker euro. So the key is to have monetary policy settings that are consistent with price stability. Now we are confident that, by the way, we have increased policy rates by 25, 75, 75, and then another 50. And of course, you cannot say it's the end of it because in the US keeps doing 75. So we cannot not react. That's double negative. So our point is that fortunately, in spite of all this very difficult environment, we have one thing going for us. We're we're looking at a scenario where we have no more lockdowns. So the management of COVID will have a very strong demand for the simple reason that you have quite a bit of pent up demand in 2020, 2021. Of course, the layman's term for pent up demand is revenge spending. And this is what will enable us to grow very fast in spite of tightening monetary conditions. The second point is that despite the large increases in policy rate, in real terms, they're still quite low. Because remember, because of what's going on outside the Philippines, inflation is very high, much lower in the Philippines than the United States, Europe, and UK, but relative to past history, much higher. So if you're a borrower and the policy rate is 3.75 and the forecasted inflation is 5, it's still quite cheap. Okay, so in short, there's room. Monetary policy still has much room, and whatever happens, we have the capacity to make sure that we will have, again, this is central bank speak, target consistent inflation path. Is in short English is it's high now, but it will be low later. And a wrong forecast is that it will be 3% by 20, closer to 3% than to 4% by 2024. So in other words, high now, but it's going that direction. Of course, we can never actually say what will happen, but there are forces that are working in our favor. If US monetary policy becomes too restrictive, demand will fall, and the things we import will fall. Because right now, the increase in our current account deficit, 2/3 of that is because of high prices of the things we import. So there's both a downside and an upside, but on balance, we are confident we have enough room. The economy is strong enough, the banking system is strong enough, and the payment system is also improving very fast. The number of people, as already mentioned by Secretary Giacomo, the number of people who have basic accounts rising very fast, and the number of people who are using fast payment systems also very, very fast. By the way, we have a project with Singapore to, if you're in Singapore, Singaporeans can use their phone to make payments. If you're in the Filipino, Singapore can use his phone. Of course, there are a lot of other ends to tie together, and when you have this kind of future, you have to be optimistic.
So there you have it from the central bank governor himself. Be optimistic. Have
Ready.
confidence.
Be optimistic but ready.
Be optimistic but ready. Have confidence. Have faith. And so now let's ask our special guest from the private sector, Ms. Teresita C. Coson. She is Vice Chairman of SM Investments Corporation. SM Investments is a leading Philippine company that is invested in market-leading businesses, in retail banking, and property. And it also invests in ventures that capture high-growth opportunities in the Philippine economy. Ma'am, may we ask, please share your outlook on growth and business environment over the next 24 months.
I think not the private sector, which I'm representing. I think we're very confident about this team and about our present administrations, our president looking into our economic future. The monetary policy, the financial policies are very stable, and in spite of the inflation's rate and as well as the uh, depreciations, we're still very much okay. And you don't hear a lot of complaints on many areas in the private sector. So we're confident that we're all together toward a better economic futures in the Philippines.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That's very positive, and thank you for the words of confidence for the economic team. Okay, so on that note, may we ask the head of the economic cluster of the cabinet, Finance Secretary Ben Jokno. They had earlier discussed the medium-term fiscal framework. If we could get your insight on the government's fiscal consolidation and how it will achieve the target of reducing national government deficit to GDP to 3% by 2028.
Okay, the previous administration left us with a very sound tax regime. Okay, in fact, they cut personal income tax, they cut corporate income tax, but they increased the tax on cigarettes 3 times, and they also impose a tax on sugary products. And as you know, Filipinos love to drink soft drinks a lot. So getting benefit is the digitalization. We are going to digitalize or computerize both the Bureau of Internal Revenue, but although they have already made some progress, and the Bureau of Customs. So we will focus first on improving tax administration, because we have, I said, okay, there are many government assets that we can privatize. We will be very strong on that. And we are also, as mentioned by the Secretary of Budget and Management, we're going to right-size the government. I think things have actually changed, say, from 20 years ago. Maybe there's some jobs that you don't need now because of you can computerize government operations. You can, for example, tax paying. You don't see a long lines now during the tax payment period. 95% of all taxes now are paid digitally. So there are lots of things that have changed, so as a result of that, we are also reviewing. There's a big elephant in the room, the military pension system. We're going to fix that also. That is about 120 billion pesos every year, yearly. Okay, what kind of pension system is that? Where it is indexed to the salary of the current armed personnel, and they don't pay any premium. Okay, they don't contribute. What kind of tax pension system is that? We're going to revamp that. Okay, and so easily we can gain some more fiscal space if we fix that problem. So there are lots of things we can do, and we will. The other thing is we will now we have now a long list of ready to implement projects, and these are not just ordinary projects. These are big projects, railway projects. For example, airports. We have actually constructed a lot of airports during the past administration. We are going to privatize the management of the airport. Okay, and so I think the Secretary of Transportation will talk about that later. So there are lots of things we can do to reduce spending and then enlarge the fiscal space. Then we can concentrate on really more important things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So there's a lot on the agenda. So you had also mentioned in your keynote earlier that there is the objective of bringing down poverty incidence to single digit, 9%. And there is also the objective of attaining upper middle income status. So if we may ask our NEDA secretary, when will the Philippines attain upper middle income status? And what does this mean to most Filipino families? And what will drive the attainment of this goal?
Okay, let me answer that by saying that our plan, that is the 8-point development agenda, Philippine development plan, is to generate jobs, reduce poverty by focusing on addressing the development constraints to growth, constraints to poverty reduction. That means that we're going to focus on sectors or areas where jobs matter most and where poverty reduction matter most. And that pertains to agriculture, reviving agricultural activity, reviving manufacturing, including mining, responsible mining, of course, focusing on new growth drivers like tourism, expanding the growth centers beyond Manila and neighboring provinces to include more growth centers in the Visayas, for example, Cebu, Iloilo, Bacolod, and in the Mindanao regions, particularly Davao and Cagayan de Oro. Now, with the infrastructure, connectivity, and digital connectivity, we should be able to spur development outside of Metro Manila, so that growth is not just concentrated in the national capital, but growth occurs everywhere, and that's what we refer to as broadly based. So with that, we can attaining the middle income, upper middle income status by 2024 is fairly, in my view, easy, and the achieving poverty reduction or poverty incidence, or hitting poverty incidence to 9% by 2028 is very much doable.
Thank you, sir. So in a nutshell, it's definitely inclusivity among sectors and also to the regions. And so now if we could go to the private sector once again, ma'am, in your view, following what Secretary Balisacan had just said, what are the key development issues that the Philippine economy faces?
Actually, the way we're a company who has been investing in the economic futures of the Philippines. We have been in existence for about 60 years, and we grow as the economy grows. So we are very focused on the different areas that the government is working on. Because of the lack of foreign direct investment, the Philippines, the way I see it, has been made up of a lot of small and medium industry, and especially the micro ones. And they're the ones who have been supplying the jobs among themselves. And with that commerce, it goes up the supply chain to create demands for for a more upscale products and services. And this is where, if I can talk as part of the government, this is where we like to bring more investment to the Philippines. Because we are ready. We have about 100 plus millions, 110 millions Filipinos, and we don't have that hunger. Although we have high percentage of poverty, but we don't have that hunger. We have been able to maintain that because of a lot of the micro businesses, and that has sustained a lot of jobs. The owners are providing jobs themselves, and they've been employing a lot of people. 62% of the job creations are in the micro industry, and that's include part of the agriculture. So what we would like to see is if we can have foreign investment that will capitalize on our populations, on the digital, on our labor force. We do have a lot of people who are good in the business processing, in the marines, in the constructions, in the medical. There are a lot of things that our people, the labor force can provide. We are in the industries of services, of the retail and banking, so we can see that. We have been expanding also into the different corners of the nation. We have an inclusive banking group, which goes into the microfinance as well as some salary loans. So we can see that the economy is growing in the different areas, and so we like to upscale ourselves and also be able to lift up to a higher level of economic activities. Now, right now, there is this, because of all of the things that are happening, and there are a lot, I mean, all of these activities are happening, and the administration is looking into the economic side. I think there will be a faster rise to a middle class, mass affluent. So, for the reasons I am promoting is because in our business, we are in retail, properties, and also banking. If the economy does well, it will cascade down to more purchasing power, and that will of course impact our business positively. So I guess there are a lot of things that one can do in the Philippines, and in our group with the private sector, we're looking into Invest Philippines, and to really invite a lot of people to come to the Philippines, because there are a lot of things that we can do together.
Thank you, ma'am. And that's very encouraging that you think that we will even attain the goals sooner. Just as a follow-up, as you have discussed these issues, could you also share your views on or maybe recommendations for the Philippine government in its agenda?
I guess they have been working on the taxes, and maybe and also simplifications of the bureaucratic system. If that can be accelerated, and the focus will be in the Invest Philippines, and not that I'm pushing our group Invest Philippines, but to have more investment in the Philippines, to be able to accept more investment in the Philippines, then the economic activities will be more robust than if we were to do it ourselves. With ourselves, we are doing okay, and our country is okay. But we, of course, will always like to strive for more. And an economic forum like this, I really like to encourage that maybe you can work with any of the private firm to really look into how it is to invest in the Philippines.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And that is very much aligned with the vision of the president to make the Philippines an investment destination. So if I could just go back again to our central bank governor, could you please share your views on the outlook for the external sector this time, including remittances and the business process outsourcing sector?
Okay, of course, we are very optimistic about BPO. In fact, they were telling me that we are a little bit more flexible on the tax incentives to apply to work from home. Because the way the laws are written, if you're not in a zone, you don't get the tax incentive, the income tax holidays. So if you can do that, they're saying, oh, we can easily grow at 12%. So this is one advantage that we have. On the other hand, remittances will probably grow at 5% because it's already very large. Right? When you have a very large base, it's very hard to grow it very fast. But still a major contribution to supply of dollars. Now, of course, the balance of payment situation is actually the main source of the weakened peso. Because our own calculation is, well, for instance, last year, the current account deficit, use simple terms, if you strip the payments of the Philippines with the rest of the world of capital flows and only include interest and dividends and goods and services, that deficit used to be 5. The way it looks, it will be almost 20. And we studied what caused it. What caused it was 2/3 of it is due to high import prices. Only 1/3 is due to high growth. So clearly, also despite the current account deficit, the balance of payments deficit is not that large because, as pointed out in one of the charts of Secretary Jokno, foreign direct investment is now at an all-time high. And then also this year, although this is not a good year, we still don't have large outflows in the portfolio side. So if things normalize, the foreign direct investments plus the portfolio flows could, and then of course we're lucky that the price of oil goes down, normalizes. Then the balance of payments will easily be financed. Now, of course, it could happen that all the good things I'm saying doesn't happen, and we have buffers. Our international reserves are not excessive, but much more than comfortable. So, of course, we can. The central bank cannot keep on financing the deficit. Sooner or later, run out. But the way we calculate it, we have to have a long series of streak of bad luck. As I said, it's eight. Whether you compare it to imports or you compare it to maturing debt, it's quite large. So that's the other thing that's going for us. By the way, that's to the credit of central bank governors before me. So, in short, we have good buffers, and the possible recovery of BPO and the stability and resilience of remittances, with enough direct investments, with enough portfolio flows, and then of course there are loans from the World Bank, ADB, and JICA. We will be able to finance what has to be financed. Of course, it's really important that tax collection becomes more efficient. By the way, the other thing that I say is what the Philippines did not do is should attract attention. The calls to cut taxes and fuel are there, and of course it's very attractive to do myopic things and give in to all these pressures. Instead, the government stood said no, we will not do it, and we will have more targeted interventions. Okay, so we're the only country we're one of the few countries that actually tax fuel rather than subsidize them. And with the marking system, we will know what's smuggled. I know Secretary Jok knows this, but he has too many things on his mind. He forgot to say it. Okay, so those are the things that are. Well, maybe he can describe the fuel marking strategy better than I do. But there are a lot of things that we can do to make sure that we can finance development. And then to make matters even more attractive, the new administration is making PPP even more attractive. Okay, so, and then of course we change the laws on the definition of services. Because the problem is if you define something as a utility, it's covered by limits on foreign ownership. We just said, the following services are not covered. And both houses agreed. So plenty of things have been opened up. So there's, you should not like central bank governors that are cheerleaders. And I'm not cheerleading, huh? I'm just telling the truth. Okay, so so that's why I'm quite optimistic. The opening of the Philippines, the Congress realizing that we need foreign investments, and that the Constitution is restrictive, but there are ways of writing laws that remains faithful to the Constitution, that at the same time expands areas in the Philippines that are open to foreigners.
Thank you, sir. And I think that's why the private sector, as expressed by Ms. C. Coson, is very appreciative of the economic managers in your ability to make sound decisions and to be firm on these. And so we have limited time today. May we just get the final remarks from each of our members of the panel? May we start with the private sector, ma'am?
Well, we invest in the economic futures of the Philippines, and I think in the Philippines still a good place to invest. We are in the banking area, so we have some numbers, and beside what will be provided by the government. So I guess you can always inquire from us to see the other side of the other side the private sector opinions.
Thank you, ma'am. And because ladies first, may we hear from Budget Secretary Amina Pangandaman?
Um, from our end, at least for the budget, given the limited fiscal space, of course, as a result of the pandemic and the global pressures, we will try to still fund the priority projects of the president and anchor the same on the socio-economic agenda. But we are here to, of course, ask the help of our partners to invest in the Philippines through PPPs. I think Secretary Jokno will can also elaborate the amendments of the PPP IRR, and yeah. So I think we can just say is that well, the Philippines is open and we need your help. And from our end, again, the administration will provide the necessary regulatory environment to everyone who wishes to invest in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And from budget, let's go to our NEDA secretary.
With what we are putting across the plans and programs that this administration are putting together, we are confident that doing business in the Philippines is not only profitable, but also more fun.
And our central bank governor.
Okay, we are like motor oil. We cannot make a slow car faster, but we will make sure the car will always functional. And we know that the car is faster. So the oil will be there for that. And that's really just the three pillars: price stability, strong and stable financial system, and a modern, efficient payments and settlement system. This is the environment that we will provide so that the fast car could reach maximum speed.
And finally, the head of the economic cluster, Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno.
All right, many people here probably don't realize, but the Philippine economy is 75% private and 25% government. Because we have a very small government. We don't tax a lot, unlike other governments. Okay? So, but we help steer the economy. And I can tell you that I've been in government for 4 decades. I've served 4 presidents, and this is, I love to say, this is our moment. Okay, we have changed drastically the environment, and now I think you're welcome to do business in the Philippines. It's a much improved environment, and plus our secret weapon, we have a very young population, 25. That's the median age. Most English speaking and tech savvy. So it's very nice to work in that kind of environment. Just as NEDA Secretary here said, it's fun to do business in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So, following the first state visit of the president to Jakarta, and now here in Singapore, it's wonderful to see not only the warm reception, but the renewed investor confidence in the Philippines. So, on that note, we have a PS from.
Yes, I have a PS. I just wanted to say that this economic team and also the other members of the cabinet members are very open to encourage opinions to really make things more to make the investment more possible. They're very open, and that is what we in the private sectors are happy about.
So, Ms. C. Coson, NEDA Secretary General, Secretary General, NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balsacan, Secretary Jokno, Governor Madaya, and Budget Secretary Pangandaman, thank you very much. We look forward to your investments. And I'm Margo Salcedo moderating for this panel. Let's look forward to the next panel after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Undersecretary Margo Salcedo. Thank you to the economic team and to Ms. C. Coson. We will now proceed to infrastructure and industry. But before we do that, can we ask those who have been standing for more than an hour to take seats? There are available seats. And okay, as the room settles down to deliver the keynote presentation for the panel on infrastructure and industry, may we call on stage Trade and Industry Secretary Alfredo E. Pascual of the Republic of the Philippines.
Fellow workers in government, our private sector partners from the Philippines, Singapore, and other countries. I know that in Singapore there are many representatives of businesses based in other countries. Let me jump directly into the strategic investment priority plan of the Philippines at the moment. There are 3 tiers in our SIPP. First tier is for modern agriculture and food processing, design focused industries, energy efficient projects, health and medical products, and infrastructure projects, among others. Tier 2 includes green metals and electric vehicles, health and related activities such as vaccine production, defense-related activities, steel and chemicals. And Tier 3 are activities that are expected to generate research and development, breakthroughs, new knowledge, and intellectual property. In line with the SIPP, or Strategic Investment Priority Plan, we will leverage the fourth industrial revolution technologies and our existing industry strengths and competencies to upgrade, diversify, and reposition the country's global value chain participation. Our industrialization strategy targets 4 industry clusters. First, the industrial, manufacturing, and transport cluster. This cluster opens investment opportunities in aerospace, automotive, and semiconductors. The Philippine aerospace sector has capabilities in flight control actuation and oxygen systems manufacturing, aviation, aerospace engineering, training, as well as aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul, or MRO. For example, located in the Philippines is the #1 aircraft interior company in the world. This is Collins Aerospace. We are also host to the world's leading aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul company. This is the Lufthansa Technik Philippines. 2 weeks ago, Lufthansa Technik Philippines inaugurated its expansion phase, that call it Hangar A1, that added about 300 more engineers and other experts to bring the total complement of personnel to 3,000 engineers and other experts. vehicles or EVs. We will enter the EV global value chain by producing pollution reduction devices and other green materials that go into the production of these vehicles. On semiconductors, we want FDIs that capture added value rather than just low cost. That's now the basis of competition in BPO. It's value addition, not cost saving. And expand the operation of semiconductors in the country. In the technology, media, and telecommunication cluster, we will optimize the fact that 82% of our BPOs and shared services centers serve global markets. In the next decade, BPOs will be a cross-cutting contributor to the other global value chains that they support. As the pandemic increased global interest in data centers, the Philippines is now the destination of new data centers being established worldwide. We are looking at the hyperscale industry as the country's next growth engine. A few weeks ago, we inaugurated or launched the Jupiter cable system of PLDT in partnership with NTT. Low culture. We will bring processed food, textiles, and natural fibers together with design, R&D, engineering, IT, and digital services, marketing, financing, and after-sales customer support. Foreign financing and credit companies can use data from the digitalization of Philippine commercial processes to test our market. We are working with scientists from the National Academy of Science and Technology of the Philippines and the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, or PAASE. This is an association of scientists and engineers spread over the world, but of all of Filipino descent. So they're now giving back to the country while and processing of high-value crops such as coffee, cacao, coconut, and abaca would further develop the STI ecosystem throughout the country, not just in Metro Manila and the Calabar zone. Upon President Marcos' directive, we will continue to build better, more, BBM. This building of infrastructure facilities all over the country. We're talking here of transport and logistics, energy, water resources, information and communications technology, agri, fisheries modernization, and food logistics. There's always this problem of moving food supply from areas of excess supply to areas of deficit. We will solve that through technology-driven logistics. Let me cite another example of an infrastructure we're doing. We are stretching Manila's direct catchment area for talent to support the advanced sectors that I was talking about.